Maggos. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this week's Orthodoxy Questions Answered with Father Angelo and myself, Marissa. We're trying out something a bit different this week where we're going to be talking, or not this week, but in general, going into the future, we figured we'd spice things up by having a theme each week. So the theme for this week is going to be on effectively communities, culture, and the Orthodox Church. And we'll get into that in a little bit. And I also want to note to folks that I do see your comments here, and we'll get to those after our discussion. And if you want, please feel free to ask questions relevant to the theme, but I'm going to try and make a really great effort to get to all the questions I can get to, throughout the hour. But it should only take maybe 15 minutes, 20 at most. But yeah, so Father A has the, is it whiskey or scotch of the week? What is it today?
Well, it's the Scotch whiskey of the week, right? We have to always start off with the Scotch whiskey of the week, but it's going to be a little bit of a test, all right? So as most of you know, we make the pilgrimage to the Highlands every year, and we visit, most times we visit the Culloden battlefield. And so every year or every 2 years, they make a special edition whiskey, and the distilleries in Scotland kind of fight for the ability to put the Battle of Culloden label on. This particular one, I believe, because I'll never say, but I believe is the Balvenie Scotch. But I've got a question. So what I'd like to see is if anybody knows why the Battle of Culloden is so significant in Scottish history. So I'm going to leave it with a question this time. And again, since we're running this out of the church, we can look, but we can't touch.
Yeah. Yeah, no touch, no drink.
No drink, no touch.
But actually, so NG1A has a really pertinent question, and we've been getting a lot of questions that are pertinent to our theme this week of community, culture, and orthodoxy. And I'll just kind of go through some questions first that pertain to this, and we'll see what kind of conversation comes up.
Sure, great.
So NG1A asks in the chat right now, excellent segue. Greek is not a dead language, but I do foresee Greek being used by the Greek Orthodox Church of America in the future, or do you see it being used by the Greek Orthodox Church in America in the future? Don't they use it already? That would be my perception.
Well, so as you know, with any language, we're using different styles of Greek. So we have the Greek of Homer and Plato. We have the Greek of the New Testament. We have the Greek of the liturgical fathers. And then we have Katharevousa Greek. And then we have modern Greek. So we have this huge evolution. So just like English, I mean, if you talked to George Washington, you'd probably pick up most of what he said, but not the whole conversation. I've listened to some old English on YouTube, and it's just way out there. It's the same thing with New Testament Greek. It is a fairly simple Greek, and that's why it's called in Greek Kieni Greek, because it is the common language that was spoken. It was the vulgar language, if we want to use that very Catholic term, right? And so what happens in Greece is they are reading the New Testament during a church service. They're reading the New Testament in biblical Greek, and then they are reading it again in modern Greek. So what does that tell you?
That's a lot of Greek.
Yeah. and tell it that the people of Greece do not necessarily understand what biblical Greek, right? So that's a separate, it's an ancient language. So I wanted to start there because people need to understand that language evolves.
Yeah.
Now, your question is, having done that intro, say the question again now.
Yeah, so there's a few questions, though.
Okay.
For instance, I'm just going to kind of go back to some questions that have been asked in the past. For instance, Fitsum Amswelu asked, would you be willing to tell us the difference between the Ethiopian Orthodox Church and the Greek, or even, these kind of thoughts or perceptions about, I know Greek people like to use the word exeni, or people who aren't Greek coming to a Greek Orthodox church and diluting the church.
Well, two separate things.
Two separate things, but they all kind of tie around this same sort of theme of like, within America, right? You have Russian Orthodox churches, you have Greek Orthodox churches,
Romanian, Ukrainian, Serbian, right?
Yeah, like the list goes on.
Right.
So, like, my kind of question that comes into that is, right, because of that, and because of potentially this goal that some folks might have of there being one Orthodox church, kind of comparable to the Catholic Church, we won't go into that too much, but
Right.
the kind of the question of like, what is it like on both, not necessarily that there's two sides, but like, what is it like for an exeni coming into a Greek Orthodox church? And what is it like for someone who has been raised in that church and comes from a village, that like, immigrated here and like grew up in this church, like kind of coming to terms with these two kind of perspectives and what that means for the future of our church. So just based on that, like, what are your first initial kind of thoughts?
Yeah, so let me take that kind of xeni from both sides, because for us who are Greek, seeing somebody who is not Greek come into church, we'll use that term xeni and let them know what xeni means, because maybe that's a Greek word. So
it means like stranger, non-Greek, pretty much.
But at the same time, the person who is not Greek comes into our church and sees us as xeni, right? Because we are not of their culture, so we're the strangers, right? So there is on both sides this discomfort. One, from the side of the person who is not Greek coming into the church, coming from another expression of Christianity such as Protestantism or Catholicism, and there is that very Western way of doing things, and coming into a church like ours where it's a very Eastern way of doing things. Okay, so that can be very discomforting. At the same time, and I saw this when I was in my parish in Flint, is that as more and more non-Greeks come in, there is a sense that we are diluting our church. And it is very, very, very difficult for Orthodox to separate their religion from their culture. They're intertwined. They're like body and soul. The Catholic Church, on one hand, has done in America, speaking of America, has done a pretty good job, because it doesn't mean as much today to say Polish Catholic, Irish Catholic, Italian Catholic. That has kind of, it's become a little bit more homogenous. We are not there yet, so we hold on to that, because we did come from our parents, our grandparents came from another country. They love this country, they are immigrants, but it's still a strange land. So where do you go that you can be comfortable?
The church.
The church, right? Because I can hear the Greek, I hear it. I can speak with people in coffee hour. When I go to a wedding, they're doing the same dances that I am. They're eating the same strange foods, right? Okay, you tell anybody, "Whoa, I just had grilled octopus, octopus scara, I've got this grilled octopus," and the other people, the xeni, are looking at you like, "Grilled octopus? You got to be crazy." So, but there's a safety in that, right?
Yeah.
And that has to be recognized. So what I saw in Flint, just because I had more time to be there, was that I saw both sides were having an issue. The side that was, I hate to use the word losing, it's a bad word, to losing, but what was happening was more and more of the immigrant Greeks, the first generation, were seeing less and less of the service in Greek, and less people knowing how to dance, less people in coffee hour speaking Greek. And now it's not sanctuary anymore. And that made them scared. And they would come to me and they'd say, "Father, what is happening to our church?" And what's happening to the church is that body and soul is now coming apart, so that it's becoming an Orthodox church. And there is a Greek culture that happens to be part of it, as opposed to, the two having been together.
Yeah, it harkens back to this concept that I've been recently in times been kind of made aware of a third space in society, right? So you have home and you have work, but that's not all you need as a person to sustain your spiritual and your livelihood, right? You need a third space. And historically, churches have provided that for people.
Okay, all right.
Right? So
Right.
that's where people can come together, where you're not necessarily paying money on food to be in that space, as you would in a restaurant, or paying money to go into a club or something, to see your friends. But it's a space where people can come together, right?
You're right.
That's
right.
free, that helps build community. And a lot of people feel very protective over that third space.
And if that space now doesn't look the way that it did in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, right? Okay. But where's that balance? If I do the majority of the service, and again, we're picking on language here, but if I do the majority of the service in Greek, I'm going to have a comfort level among those immigrants who are going to say, I hear it. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. But then I'm going to have people like my own wife, who is not Greek, and of the marriages that I've done, those young people who are going to say, I don't understand what's going on. And I am being made to feel like somebody who is outside of this community. So what is their role in finding, what is their third space?
And as people who are already within the space, right, like you, other people, I guess myself, right, I feel like I personally have a responsibility to not make this space exclusive, but make it as inclusive as I can, right? So should one's parish and church operate in an exclusive sense or an inclusive sense, right? And how do we welcome in those new people and share with them our cultures and also learn from their cultures that they're bringing with them?
Well, the uncomfortable truth, and let's put it on the table, if we choose to be exclusive, then we will be like the fig tree that produces no fruit.
Yeah.
I mean, right? And we all know what Christ did to that fig tree, all right? Okay, so that can only lead to death, okay? Because we're not getting that immigration that's coming here to this country, right? Okay, so I don't think that is not the answer, to be exclusive. But equally so, the answer is not throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, well, you know what, we're not a Greek Orthodox church. So, for example, in my last parish, when we were building the church, a couple of the people came to me and said, Father, I don't want you to put the word Greek on the sign. I don't want this to be a Greek Orthodox church. I want it to be an Orthodox church. And I said, we can't do that, because it indicates much more, and a little bit of a sidebar here, that word indicates the kind of expression of liturgy that you will, a Russian liturgy is not a Greek liturgy, is not a Serbian liturgy. When you see the word Greek Orthodox, you know the kind of liturgy you're going to see. If it just says Orthodox Church, is it an Ethiopian service? Is it a Russian service? And so there is a comfort level among those who are not Greek, who grew up in a Greek Orthodox church.
Yeah, no, exactly. I know, for instance, my kind of feeling since I converted later in life is, the sense of you meet everyone in the church and they're like, oh, do you speak Greek? And I'm like, oh man, I can't imagine what it would feel like for me if I didn't have any Greek heritage. I can't necessarily speak Greek, not very well, but to be repeatedly asked that, it does feel alienating from I don't want to say it's another side, but it's another perspective as an Exeni coming in.
Got a kind of a funny story. Again, last parish, we had a small Romanian population there. Okay, and I'm a glossophile, so I love languages. All right, so I wanted to learn some Romanian and stuff.
Yeah.
And so there was a certain part in the liturgy, where we go again and again, in peace, let us pray, the Lord help us, save us. Right? So I learned that whole part in Romanian. And so during the liturgy, the first one I did in English, the second one I did in Greek, and the third one I did in Romanian. And I went into coffee hour, and one of the ladies came up to me and she says, "What the heck are you doing? What was that mumbo jumbo that you were saying?" And I said, "Now you know how it feels." I said, because that's when my wife hears Greek, not that she can't understand Greek, but now you understand when somebody who is not Greek comes in and they hear it, it is foreign to their ears. Now you've heard it in Romanian, you have no idea what that is, and all of a sudden she was like, okay, I'm not saying the light went off, but she started to kind of get it.
Yeah.
That, oh, wow, I felt very unincluded when you did that, so it kind of sparked something.
Tell them what you do during Easter service.
Oh, I was going to bring that up. So
Speak Klingon?
No.
Well, yes.
So what was it? I think it wasn't this past Easter service, but the one before, where
we did it for both. Where we
for
had
both?
Different
languages. You had someone come in who chanted in Arabic.
Yes,
and that was beautiful. I loved that.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
And it's very melodic. It's very beautiful, but it is disquieting because you have a church here that has never heard anything but Greek. And to hear another language is a clear indication that the times they are a-changing.
Yeah.
And that can be a very, very scary thing.
Yeah, totally. I guess with that, we can kind of start to wrap up the discussion because, I don't want to leave folks hanging here in the comments. We'll start to get to them.
Community tab and storms. Father, can you mention the community tab and storms?
So what we want to do is we want to make sure that all of you are in touch with the latest thing of what's going on. So what we want to do is we want to encourage the use of the community tab on the YouTube page, because we're going to be posting. We're going to really focus on posting future events, what we're doing, and all that. So we want to really strive to use that community tab. So really take a look at that and spend some time there. And I think one other thing we were going to
thunderstorms coming in.
Oh yes, yeah. So a little bit of weather here. I don't think it's from Laura or anything like that, no. But so if we get if the signal kind of goes in and out, maybe you'll know what that's from. But we'll get you back online for sure. All right.
I'm going to highlight some things that Gary has said in the chat just because they pertain, and it will be a nice segue into addressing some of the other questions. But Gary has some really nice commentary. And he says, "I am not Greek, as you may see, but I came into the church via the GOA.
Okay.
The church is not being diluted, but the culture is being diluted, as it probably should be in this day and age. I greatly appreciate what the immigrants built. I would not be Orthodox if it hadn't been for them. But the church absolutely needs to open up and be open because people need the church. The sanctuary should be Christ and Him along.
Yes.
Culture passes and change, but Jesus Christ doesn't." And he says, "Sorry, we need an American liturgy." And he continues and says, "But please do not get me wrong. I love the DL in multiple languages, but divine liturgy in multiple languages, but I am American and my primary language is English, and I do not feel led to another jurisdiction.
Jurisdiction.
I can't say words. Sorry, everyone.
and Gary, I'm on board with what you're saying. I don't disagree. What I will add to that is what the bishop mentioned to me, which is very important. Our bishop says that the priests that are in the parish have the responsibility to minister to all of their flock. Part of my flock are an immigrant population that is more comfortable hearing Greek. Mm-hmm. And part of the flock here is those that are comfortable in English. All right. So in order for me to do my job properly, I cannot eliminate the Greek.
Yeah.
And I don't think Gary is advocating for eliminating it, but what changes are the percentages. When I first got here, they said, Father, do 50-50. I said, no, I'm not going to do that, because that is not the makeup of this church. For those that understand the liturgy in Greek, represents probably about 20 to 30%, and that's an appropriate slice, right? So to eliminate the Greek leaves out an important part of the parish that I'm obligated to minister to.
Yeah, and I think that makes you, I don't know if I'm overstepping here, but I think that makes you a very responsible priest, by considering like who you are, who is within your parish,
right,
and trying to serve them. Edward also says, I'm new to Greek Orthodox Church. Greek isn't my native language, but I don't mind. I'm learning slowly, but getting it. Same with you, Edward. But yeah, let's get to some questions.
Okay.
So Aaron 88205 says, Blessed week to all. My question is, how is it that depictions of God the Father have appeared in some churches, even though it's forbidden? Also, if we happen to own an icon like that, should we keep it or discard it?
Oh, so as most of you, if you've tuned into this station, this channel, you know that I came from Tarpon Springs, and for those of you that have been to St. Nicholas in Tarpon Springs, when you look up into the dome, what do you see? You see God the Father with the big long beard holding up the earth. I stared at that my entire time growing up, thinking, how beautiful is that? I go to seminary and they say that is the most heretical thing that you could do. So I'm like, but... So I leave, I go to the dorm room. Hanging up in the dorm room is a picture of God the Father with a beard. So I said, well, why is this here? And they says, oh, we just like the icon. And so my head exploded, and then, all right, what's that? Yes, even in our own church, we have that icon.
Check out the virtual tour.
Oh, yes, you'll see it. If you check out the virtual tour and you go to the back of our church, you'll see that heretical representation. All right. We do believe in the 10 Commandments, certainly, and you shall have no graven images. Okay, nobody has seen the face of God. So we cannot depict that, because that is a violation of that. Christ, on the other hand, this is his personhood. So this is a representation of his mortality, or I shouldn't even say that, his humanness, not his mortality, his humanness, okay? That we feel can be portrayed, all right? Now, remember how Greek Orthodoxy started in America is that we didn't have, like the Russians, where a bishop came and established a church and then built the churches. We came as immigrants first, and then we wanted to paint our churches, so we hired iconographers and we told them what we wanted to do, and somebody said, this is what I want because I've seen this.
Yeah.
Okay, and so they did, and there wasn't any bishops here to say no. So time goes by, and
it evolves.
And it evolves, and that's what it is. Now, all of a sudden, you go back and you say, oh, no, I'm sorry, but you can't have that. That's heretical. Well, no priest ever told me it was heretical. So, there was a degree of confusion and misunderstanding about iconography and what is proper and what is not proper.
So should he get rid of his icon if he has it, or no, keep it? Short answer.
It's a work of art. It is somebody's representation of what they think God the Father is. Okay, you're not going to hell because you have a picture and somebody represented God. Okay, but just know that the proper expression of God the Father is the hospitality of Abraham icon, which shows then the three angels gathered around the table at the Oak of Marne. And that is the proper expression.
And if it doesn't look like Morgan Freeman, forget about it.
And if it doesn't look like Morgan Freeman, it's not God. But again, the icon technically is a violation of the you shall love the Lord your God. The second commandment.
So the next question is from Nick, and he asks, I recently watched an Orthodox funeral on YouTube, and the priest commented that the departed was in heaven. Will all people who have died face the final judgment, or will some go straight to heaven?
Oh. So,
Wow, that's a reaction. That's a reaction.
Once, we were, I don't even want to use the word cautioned. We were scolded and told in seminary, do not ever say, oh, can't do that. Sorry. Okay.
Do not do that either.
Yeah, don't do that either. All right. But we were specifically told, do not say that they're going to heaven or they're going to hell.
Yeah.
Because you are not the judge. Only Jesus Christ is the judge. All right? So we were told never to say that. What we say is that when I talk to people, I say, and we pray that his soul receives its reward in heaven. Mm-hmm. Okay? Because that's not a statement. But when the priest says they are in heaven, okay.
That's a little problematic.
So I'm going to give a story here. I love stories. So because there was a funeral it wasn't my parish. It was another parish I was visiting, and the priest did say that, and said, and he now resides in heaven. Well, the son stood up and said, no, he's not, because he was an SOB that beat my mother, and I hope that he rots in hell. So it created this very negative reaction. You can imagine, it's a funeral and everything like that. Okay,
wow.
so not only is it inappropriate for any mortal to have the mind of God, it can also create, as I witnessed, it can also create a very dangerous situation because, you don't necessarily know who that person was.
Yeah, very, very true. So continuing on with the questions, thank you for that story. I wish there was a camera there. I wish that could have been on YouTube. I'm just kidding. But Tamer says, and I saw your comment earlier, Tamer, and I'm very sorry. My heart goes out to you. Tamer says, Father, someone pointed a gun at me. I called the police department. He got arrested. Everyone calls me a fake Christian because I called the police department rather than forgiving him. So am I a fake Christian for calling the police?
No. And what Orthodoxy will say is that you should have forgiveness. What Orthodoxy doesn't say is what the timetable for that forgiveness is. Okay, so and sometimes what ends up what?
No, so, it's just the timetable. Go on, sorry.
Because there are some things that are easy to forgive, but there are some things that are so heinous that it takes time to do that. And I am very resistant to those people that say, to move ahead, you must forgive now. Yes. You must at some point forgive because it will dwell in you like a cancer and it will eat at you. Okay, So it is unspiritual for you to hold on to it. So all we're saying as Orthodox is you have to find what is your appropriate timetable, but you have to release it sooner or later or it will eat you because it's not hurting the other person. He's forgotten about it. He doesn't even know. It's going to be on you.
But on top of that, if I may be so bold to say, if this person pointed a gun at you and you don't call the police and then you find out that person shot somebody, that would be a heavier burden on your soul, because you could have taken action, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And where I thought the question was going, because I think this is an important point too, is we have some uber Orthodox that feel that any time you have the ability to martyr yourself, you should do that. And that anything less than that is cowardice. And I rail against that. I think that is absolutely horrendous. Different people react to situations differently. Okay, so there is if you are put in that situation, and then there are certain things that are said, or you plead for your life. or you cry, or you do things so that you can save your life, okay, that is you at that moment. Not everybody should or does have the strength to say, yes, go ahead and kill me because I'm ready to meet my Maker. No. A lot of people are like, yes, I want to go to heaven, but not right now.
Yeah.
Not quite ready yet.
That's almost like a form of suicide in some sort of way.
Yeah,
you know?
disguised as fake martyrism, you know.
Yeah.
And remember, when you see an icon and the icon has the person holding his hand out like this, that indicates that he is a martyr, and he's telling you, do not follow this path. So even the saints tell us that.
Everyone's who's behind the camera is looking at the icons to see if there's any.
Oh.
Look up the virtual tour.
Yeah, look at the
I
virtual
don't know
tour
if we
if you
have.
want
I don't know
to.
if we have those icons.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
You have to hunt and find them.
That's just right.
KRD 1129 says, "Can Orthodox Christians raise their hands?" Another, hands, common theme. During personal, private prayer, or is this gesture only used by the priest during liturgy?
Are they talking like raising their hands like this?
I think so, maybe.
Well, sometimes, especially in non-denominational, you see a lot of people when they're praying,
Or
they're
they're-
holding
yeah.
their hands up.
And especially like this, and it was funny. Again, when I was in Flint, we had a Russian Orthodox church, we had an Antiochian church, which is the Arab church, and the Arabs have a tendency to raise their hands higher. The Greeks keep their hands a little bit lower. So I had a lot of dealings with the Antiochian priest. So the bishop came one time and was watching me serve a liturgy, and there was a certain point where so I raised my hands like this, and I was saying, and the bishop looks over at me and he goes, "When did you become Arab?"
Wow.
So again, we just have to be careful that we don't misappropriate culture that doesn't belong to us.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with having your hands up, but sometimes it is done out of this vain glory. Look at me because my hands are higher. Look how, the idea of the Pharisee and the tax collector, right? Beating your breast, and and that can be that symbol of pride. So you have to be cautious about that.
Yeah, I think KRD was asking about in private prayer.
Oh, in private prayer? Yes, absolutely. Fine. Absolutely. No problem at all.
Yeah. Spiro is back this week. Hello, Spiro. Good
Spiro.
to see you. They ask, about being wealthy and going to heaven, how much of your wealth should you give away in order to be good with God? Are we expected to give everything away? If not everything, how much is good enough?
I would say drain your bank account and give it all to the church. No.
Oh my God, at least he's honest, right? I'm just kidding.
No. We as Orthodox always see family first. So you have the primary responsibility to take care of your family, okay? And not in an ostentatious. Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow. Ostentatious way.
I know
but
some words.
whatever money that requires, a house, a nice car, school education, food on the table, okay, those things, for those of us that live in the world, not the monastics, but for those of us that live in the world, Jesus Christ never said that being rich is bad. He never said that. And he was not just the man of the poor. He preached to everybody, and that includes the wealthy. There were many people in the gospel that he knew that were very, very wealthy. All right. However, when now you have exceeded that, and you now don't show any concern for your fellow man, when you have the capability, now we're entering into a realm that is I would have to say sinful. You have an obligation, a Christian obligation, to take care of your fellow man. All right? But you have an obligation to your family first. You take care of that obligation, and then you have to set aside things, so that set aside a portion of your wealth that can then be distributed. Okay, so that you can help your fellow man. This is what we have been called to do. What the Orthodox say is that that requirement of sell all you have, what he told to the rich young man, he said, well, how can I get in heaven? And he says, sell all you have. That is the monastic calling. That is, for Orthodox, that's what we see as the monastic calling. You literally sell all that you have, including your name. You don't even have a name anymore. You were given a name so that you have abandoned the world. But we live in the world. And you need things so that you can survive in the world. And the Orthodox Church nor Jesus Christ has anything against that. But without giving of something, because remember, your wealth is not your wealth. The talent has been given by God. So that money came from God. As a synergy between,
Yeah, synergy,
right.
Some PowerPoint presentations here and there.
Yes, right.
Yeah, so in a way, like, you could kind of convey, like, this should be like an organic feeling or drive within yourself
Absolutely.
to give,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
Yeah. Continuing on, Sam M asks, can we have a censer at the house for censing and to burn incense? So, like, what kind of censer? Like a fancy, like, Orthodox?
Censer.
I mean, if you want to buy a fancy censer, buy a fancy censer. I mean,
yeah.
Most will have a thimiasterion, which is just a little tabletop. It's got the lid on it and it just opens up. Most people have that. But you know what? If you feel that you want to sense your little home iconostasi and you feel comfortable with the big censer, buy a little stand and go at it. And by the way, they are now selling hypoallergenic incense. That's what I use in the church because we have a lot of people that have allergies. So you can now buy hypoallergenic incense. Comes in all flavors, rose and camille and chamomile and so all kinds of different flavors.
So, random question then. So, like, do you have different scents you use on different days, I guess?
I only have two different censers. One has bells, one has no bells. So during Lent, when it is a somber time, I use the censer that has no bells. And then the rest of the year, I use the censer that has the bells.
Okay. So actually, the next, question kind of plays into this with, like, the icon corner kind of thing. So is it necessary to pray at the icon corner? Medieval Guitar says sometimes there are fewer distractions outdoors. Thanks.
You pray wherever you feel close to God.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
I mean, there's nothing more to be said about that.
Mm-hmm. So Shona says, Protestants believe in original sin, but I have read the Greek Orthodoxy does not have original sin. Could you please explain salvation without original sin?
So what the Orthodox Church believes in is that there was an original sin, but that sin does not carry through the progeny. So there is nothing that is inherited by the progeny that has to be removed through a sacrament like baptism. Mm-hmm. Okay? We believe that the original sin was the sin of pride. And what that caused was a consequence. That consequence is death. So what we have inherited is that now all of and what is sometimes not understood is that all of creation paid that price. Plants paid that price, animals paid that price, insects paid that price, dinosaurs paid that price. So it wasn't something that is just passed on from human to human. All of creation now exists in this fallen state. Mm-hmm. And that is now the new reality, and Satan is now the king of this world. All right? So for us, what we are doing is being renewed in Christ, who has returned our immortality to us that we had in the Garden of Eden. So that's why he is called the new Adam, because he has restored what the original Adam and Eve lost.
We also have a video about original sin on YouTube.
We do? Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right.
One of
Wow.
our
I'm trying to
earlier
rem-
videos.
I'm trying to remember all the videos that I've done. But the key point there is that there is not the idea of something that is inherited and must be removed that you have now in your person.
So one of the next questions is from Antonios, and I think his question pertains to our discussion with how many churches are going to close, maybe, because this comment was left during our discussion, but I don't think any churches are going to close. Do you think any are going to close as a result of COVID, maybe, or... I wouldn't think so. I feel
No,
like
COVID has absolutely nothing to do with closing of churches. What will close churches is a resistance or a partialism to exclusivity. That will close the church because it cannot survive. You know, it doesn't give the church new life. And again, I'm gonna use my own wife as the example there. Okay, so I grow up in the Orthodox Church. I never ask any questions because my faith and my culture are intertwined. There's no questions to ask because it was the priest's job to get me into heaven. All I got to do is show up to church. The priest will take care of all of the whatever he needs to do, right? He'll do his voodoo magic, and I get into heaven. I get married, and all of a sudden now, Terry starts asking me questions. Why are they sensing? Why are we standing? What is the priest doing? Why does he wear vestments? What does this mean? What is original sin? There is now this lifeblood, this new transfusion that comes in and forces me to examine my faith.
yeah.
And by doing that, I become enlivened or quickened or whatever the term is, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that I become a new person now. And I am not this dead person who just, like the Metropolis, right? The Metropolis movie, right? Where they all kind of just, shuffle into church, right? And then they sit down and then the priest finishes and then they walk out again. I now understand why we do what we do, and she asked me then more difficult questions, like what do we think about euthanasia? What do we think about abortion? Does the Orthodox Church have a position? And I have to examine that. And that brings new life in. If that new life does not continue to come into our church, that church will close.
I think one of the things I think that's a very healthy approach to take to having those questions, but I think many people would become defensive, if they don't necessarily know the answers to these questions, right?
Yeah.
And that might be like a symptom of the problem or a problem, maybe. I don't know.
The beginning of all knowledge is admitting I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. What Damo said was the beginning of all knowledge is admitting you don't know.
First step, right?
Yeah.
First
First
step.
step.
First step. Mm-hmm.
Second step, I need to find out.
Yeah.
Right.
Second step, I need to find out.
Sometimes doubt is the healthiest road to building your faith. Mm-hmm. So I rail against those that say, don't have doubt. You can't be hurt. Doubt is what drives you to seek out the answers. Because without just saying, I don't doubt, then it leaves you like an automaton, like a robot that just go through the motions and doesn't really mean anything. Have doubt.
Yeah.
But go and get an answer. Don't sit in your doubt. Do something.
So Tamara is back and asks, Father, my friend has a question for you. Her daughter suffers from a severe case of Down syndrome. She can't read nor comprehend scriptures. What's the Orthodox view regarding her salvation?
That she will be saved.
Yeah.
And we see, and this is a big reason why we don't, why we clearly do not believe in eugenics. Okay, is because each person's life has a value, and that value is not just in the person, but in the people that take care of that. That there is salvation that comes from the care of that person. So we see, somebody like, let's say, that has like severe Down syndrome or has severe retardation or something like that. We see them as children of God. So there is not any question about their salvation. But now that condition, those caretakers now are drawn into their own salvation. So there is always a purpose for why certain things happen. God did not punish the parents by giving them that child. That's ridiculous, ridiculous goofiness. But because, as going back to original sin, because death has entered the world, and disease has entered the world, and Satan is now the ruler of this reality, then things like that happen. So this is not punishment from God, but God provides then the strength that those caretakers, those parents need to make sure that that child is taken care of. And that was where their salvation comes from. So I'm still banging on the things.
I think the mic is fine. Gary says, one more comment for this evening. I love this show. You hooked me with Scotch of the Week. Take care and see you all next week, God willing.
There'll always be a new scotch on the table.
We love seeing you too, Gary. Tina asks, what is the Orthodox Church's position regarding the claim that some contemporary books say that Jesus was married?
Da Vinci Code.
The Da Vinci Code, yes.
And again, we actually did have this question in one of the previous episodes.
Really? I don't remember this.
What about Jesus being married? Again, I go back. St. Paul said, "And Christ was like us in every way except sin." Do we consider a man having an attraction to a woman a sin?
I don't think so.
Be positive, yes or no?
No.
No.
Yeah.
Say it with gusto. No.
No.
Okay. So why
If that was
should
the
we?
case, I'd be going to hell.
So why should we think that Christ as a man could not be attracted to a woman? All right. However, he was a singularly minded individual. He came for a purpose. He is man, and he is mortal, and he is divine. Okay, or I said human and divine. Okay, so he is human in every way, but his divinity gives him a single-minded purpose, and nothing will distract him from what that mission was. Nothing. And again, I relate it to this idea of somebody like a doctor who is pursuing a cure to cancer. That doctor becomes single-minded focused, and his wife says, "I never see you. You don't come home. We don't spend any time together." I mean, how many times have you, in a workplace, have you seen a situation where they are workaholics, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
they destroy their family life. They get divorced because they are single-minded focused. Now, take that to a divine degree. So, could Jesus have been attracted to Mary Magdalene? Of course. I'm not saying he was. I'm not saying he wasn't. Okay, but to be married would be a distraction.
Yeah.
I am not here to get married. What I am here to do is to save the world. That is what I'm here to do. So I don't have time for marriage. In fact, that's what St. Paul said. I would prefer that you do not marry because Jesus is coming. So again, St. Paul, single-minded focus. So in that sense, this whole idea of was he married, was he not married, means absolutely nothing to me because I don't care. All I care about is that Jesus Christ is my Savior and that he was resurrected from the dead. That's all I care about. Dan Brown, great movie. It's Tom Hanks. I love it. I loved that movie. But it was fiction.
Yeah.
It was good fiction.
Yeah, I remember that movie. I thought it was okay. One common theme I'm seeing within the chat is people are apologizing for asking questions. Please do not apologize for asking repeated questions. That's okay. This is why we have this show. The only bad question is the one not asked.
The one not asked, correct.
And so, for instance, Tamer...
I did get in trouble because my spiritual father saw me put an Irish whiskey up, and I was chastised, so I am now in penance for not having a Scotch whiskey up here. So I have to apologize for that. So.
Yeah, but that's not a question.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's okay. We can make this into a confession if you want.
Yeah,
I'm not ordained or anything. But yeah, Tamer's question was, what is the Orthodox view on people playing the role of Christ in Christian movies? Remember, like Passion of the Christ and stuff. Like, do we have a take on, his portrayal in movies? Clearly, we have no problem with icons, right?
But, yeah, and we, and as long as we follow what is in the Bible and what is not in the Bible. So most of the time, what I end up seeing is I see poetic license, right? Here's what Christ did, right? Because this is what I would do, right? Giving Christ your mind, okay? Or brutality for brutality's sake. That's what I didn't like about the whole Mel Gibson.
Yeah.
What was the name of
Passion of the Christ?
Passion of the Christ. That's what I didn't like. What purpose did it serve to watch him being beaten and tortured again and again and again? What did that do for me other than turn it into a horror movie? I mean, I didn't see a purpose there. So if what we should be doing is portraying who we know Christ is, and not putting our personal feelings into him as a historical character, and giving him attributes that he did not have.
Jim Caviezel was while he was making Passion of the Christ, I think somebody had it out for him. He got struck by lightning.
Oh, wow.
He dislocated his shoulders. He accidentally was whipped for real during the scene. He had migraines, etc. So it seems that something had it out for the poor actor.
And couldn't we, for once, have a Christ that doesn't look like Bon Jovi or somebody like that with the long hair and super white? I mean,
Gilbert Gottfried.
Oh,
Gilbert Gottfried. Yeah, I suppose like seeing the brutality of it, right, can feel a bit like gratuitous is the word.
Okay,
maybe?
yes.
Yeah.
Good way to put that, yes.
But then I think probably I could see someone rebutting that with, well, we need to be reminded with the pain he went through for us and how he suffered for us.
All right, do I need 20 minutes of that? No. What I need to see is the weapon that was used. And I need to see a single strike, okay? And I can see what that strike does, and that's what I need. That's what I need to understand. But to watch that for 20 minutes is gratuitous.
Yeah.
Roger Ebert, I think, said too much Good Friday, not enough Easter Sunday.
Ooh,
Whoa.
Yes. I think I remember him saying that. Yes, absolutely right. Mm-hmm.
So this actually goes back to a question that has been left on one of our videos. And that question or response to the one live stream we did last week was, thank you, Father Maggos, for another episode of the most bizarre Orthodox answers. A little insulting.
Some of my answers can be bizarre, yes. Okay.
I get the fact that you want to show love and be politically correct and all that stuff. However, if you're getting flustered by a question regarding the race of Jesus and you cannot say Jesus Christ was a Jew, there is a real problem. So how would you... I think what this person is trying to effectively say is, well, Jesus was a Jew and looks like a Jew, I guess. But I'm not really sure what the point here is with this other than tying it back to, the discussion you had about like how we represent Jesus within movies and film.
Right. I was just saying, it doesn't seem to, a lot of times when I see these movies, it doesn't match the area of the people that live in that particular area. I have no problem saying that Jesus was a Jew. Jesus was a Jew. He was a rabbi. I mean, they called him Rabboni. He was a rabbi. You don't call a Gentile a rabbi. So of course he was a Jew.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that it would be nice just to see somebody being represented that looks like the other people in the, because when they showed Peter had more curly hair and you know, and so that's what I'm saying. It just sometimes it looks out of place.
Yeah, always Bon Jovi-ish. So going back to the chat, Jeff says, Father, do you have any thoughts for us as we enter the ecclesiastical new year next week?
Wow. Actually, our patriarch Bartholomew has put out an encyclic, a minima, a message, and speaking about again the environment. So if you go to the website, and all the Orthodox, at least all the GOA parishes, are required to have that, and Demos, I'm going to give you that so that you can put that up on our website so we can see that and make that announcement on Sunday. But I would think that one of the things that we need to continue the discussion, because I mean I can see it in this parish, the pain that it's causing, is to get to somehow get a unified solution to Holy Communion. You know, because you know I have several factions in this parish. All of the sides I understand. I get that, and I have parishioners who are looking at what churches in Atlanta are doing and what churches in Denver diocese are doing, and why can't we? They're doing that. Why can't we do that here? And you know, we don't operate in a unified fashion, because each bishop determines how things will be done, and it can create some confusion, especially when we have parishioners who spend the summer in Florida and then they're in Arizona and then they come back here, and you know, we're doing different things. So for right now, you know, communion is the hot button topic. And coming into the new year, I would hope that at least as the GOA, we can discover and have a dialogue with the Holy Synod that brings us to some consensus of what is the proper way to you know, to distribute Holy Communion.
Yeah, I've noticed this past Sunday there was like some trepidation. Is that the word to use?
Absolutely.
Like you asked for folks to come up and receive communion, and no one really showed up. And my take is, like, I felt like I could have probably gone up and gotten communion, but at the same time, I don't want to jeopardize the elderly within the community in case, like, you know.
And I understand. And there are people in the parish that simply refuse to receive communion until some type of vaccine is discovered. That is their position. Others feel, you know what, I'm going to receive communion. I'm at.
Yeah.
So and again, and I can't speak ill against either one, you know, because I can understand both sides. But you know, because we have different dioceses doing different things, it can be confusing to the laity.
So we're going to go through one last comment and question before we wrap up. And the comment is pretty straightforward.
Wait a minute, I gotta stop. And I would say one other thing. What we should also pray for is peace, as we do in the liturgy, that we should, for this year, we should pray for peace and unity of our country. We should definitely pray for that. That God gives our leaders the ability and the strength to reunite this country. That's the other thing that we should be praying for.
Yeah, well said. So the last comment of the night is actually from your wife, Terry. She says the Irish were the first to make whiskey, so it's okay to pay homage to them by highlighting it on your show. We just thought we'd kind of close with that. But then awesome. The last question is, can you please comment on how the Eucharist is the body and blood of Christ? Not a simple answer, I know. This is from NG1A. It kind of ties to the communion topic to have on our minds going into the new year, but...
Oh, well, when they say comment, I mean, it is, it isn't. I mean, so in the sense of in the sense of COVID, we have undergone not necessarily pandemics, but every at least 10 to 15 years, our country has undergone serious medical concerns. Remember, before this, we had N1, H1, right? Then we had swine flu. Then we had AIDS. Then we had measles. Then we had polio. Then we had tuberculosis. Then we had typhoid. Then we had Spanish flu. Okay, so our church has survived all of those things, and communion has, and communion had not changed. Now, historically speaking, in this country, we've had 3 periods where the churches were closed. So this is not new. I mean, this has happened one time in the 1860s or 70s. It also happened for a short time during the Spanish flu, and it's happened now again. All right. So it's not like something that is we have no experience with, right? So, and Bishop Zizioulas, one of our modern day theologians, has said that we are required to reach everybody at where their faith is. Some of us have an extremely strong faith, meaning that we see communion as the body and blood of Jesus Christ. We see it as nothing else, and it doesn't matter what's going on in society. I'm drinking from that cup. All right, but Bishop Zizioulas also says that there are those who struggle in their faith and are weaker in their faith, and it is a concern for them because they're not there yet. And he says that we need to, and we have an obligation to minister to them as well. So this is why the Holy Fathers have made sure that the cup is gold-plated, that the spoon is gold-plated, that we use 20 to 30% alcohol, that we include scientific principles into the receipt of Holy Communion. It, as the Psalms say, do not tempt the Lord thy God. So I 100% agree with him that each one of us is on a different path. Some are on a stronger faith than others, but we should not condemn those who are nervous about receiving communion, because that's where they are in their faith, and we just should help them along. But to say you're wrong because you don't want to receive communion, ergo you don't believe in what this is, I think that's a very divisive and very terrible way to to speak to those people. We clearly believe that it is the body and blood of Jesus Christ, but it retains its organic principles, which are wine and bread. You don't taste blood, right? And you don't taste flesh. What you taste is bread and wine, intinctured with now the divine essence of Jesus Christ, right? As transformed by the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, perhaps we can talk more about that and the procession, like around the church with the communion. Not now, but maybe in the future.
We don't process around the church with communion.
Oh, wait. Then what is that?
That's just bread and wine.
Just bread.
Because it doesn't, right? It doesn't get changed until I come.
Until you come back.
Right.
Yes. But hopefully we can meet everyone on their own path next week on Orthodoxy Questions Answered.
Oh, we're gonna give us a theme for next week?
I don't know if we have a theme decided yet, but if you are interested in, giving us some feedback and letting us know what you think you would be interested in hearing us talk about, please comment below what topics would be interested. Comment below anyway, and don't forget to like and subscribe and use the community tab.
Real quick. For some reason, Paul's question didn't go through.
Oh.
And
Paul, where is your question?
It's the very, very bottom.
Oh. Yes, let's get to Paul's question really quickly. Paul says, my dad fell asleep in the Lord on July 21st, 2020. I've seen him in a dream. Just wondering if this is a sign he's okay and getting a taste of heaven. I prayed to God that I would see him. Thank you so much.
The church does say that God will allow certain things to happen to strengthen our faith. And that's what we see as miracles. As we don't get overly concerned about miracles, but we see that as things that strengthen our faith and show that God does exist and is present and active in our lives. And so we can't confirm or deny that was his dad, but I have had myself personally as a priest way too many stories like this where seeing that has given them comfort. And I've got to use Presbytera as a personal example there. When her father passed away, she was able to see him in his prime, looking absolutely perfect as she well remembers him. And there was a great deal of comfort that came from that she could say to herself, then I am comfortable with where he is. So I can't give you an Orthodox doctrine that says that, but my personal empirical data tells me that I have seen that many, many times, and the comfort that it has given that person so that they have the ability to move on from losing a loved one has been phenomenal.
Yeah.
And has been very, very spiritually strengthening.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're really sorry for the loss of your father, Paul. Sorry we didn't see your question. It might not have gone through in the chat. But thank you so much for making us aware that we missed you.
And may his memory be eternal.
Yes, and may his memory be eternal. And on that note, I guess we're going to say Kali Nikta.
Kali Nikta sas.
Yeah.